When you see what's just recently happened in Peru, a constituent assembly, they were so fed up after 2019, after the social protests there. They had a constituent assembly. Most of those elected that constituent assembly are independents. It's early days yet. Is that the route to go, rewrite the Constitution, taking a step back from the political parties as they are now?
Well, I believe that's the reason why a good amount of people didn't vote for Castillo, because they believe that a new constitution is not going to be the solution to raise jobs, to improve the economy, and I don't think that the constitution or the change of the constitution is the path that the 50% of the people who support Keiko Fujimori wants. I also want to point out that when we talk about change, at some point I believe that some percentage of the people who support Keiko Fujimori also want change, but a different kind of change. I think we also want a change because we all realize that the economy hasn't been well distributed, throughout all the country. However, the fear against Castillo, because the system that he wants to impose is a communist system, has made the people think that, well, we want change, but a change without becoming a Venezuela or Cuba, even worse.
Trilce Oblitas Béjar, explain to us what constitutional change would look like. What needs to be changed in the Constitution from what it is now?
Well, the Constitution debate, it's a broader one, but what Pedro Castillo is standing for, it's about having a first referendum that will allow people in the country decide whether or not they would want to change the Constitution. And I think that's quite important to mention, because we're talking about imposing here, and that's not the framework that Pedro Castillo is saying. He's saying that we need to consult the people. We need to run by the people of the country if we want a new Constitution. And why do we need to do this? Because similarly in the region, as other countries have undertaken a process of constitutional change, such as Chile right now and Bolivia, is because the Constitution does not reflect what the country can do in order to have better livelihoods for the people. And what specifically this entails are different articles in the Constitution that allow for concessions made to the private sector. And the Constitution currently in the country has been modified more than 10 times and still does not represent that the basic rights of people, such as having the right to have your own household, having the governance and sovereignty over our natural resources, and also the role of the state in terms of like education and health, are not being part of the current Constitution. As such, it is important to question if we need to rewrite our Constitution. And I think that's a key question when we are talking about change, because we want to improve the distribution of the resources and of the income across the people, across the population, I mean.
So let me bring in Thomas Nicolon on this.
When we talk about the Constitution, we are...
Right, yeah. Let me bring in Thomas Nicolon on this. Thomas, this is really interesting because in past editions of the show, and we've talked about Peru, the debate was at the time, because there have been so many impeachments and removals from office of the presidents. The debate from office has been, the institutions in Lima, do they work or not? But listening to what Trilce is saying, we've since had 2019 and those social protests, then compounded by the pandemic. When it comes to change in Peru, is the conversation a very different one from before?
The conversation has changed, and Chile has led the way in this conversation. And it's true that the constitution in Peru, and that's why a lot of people are asking for a change, because the constitution is unresponsive to popular demands. Indigenous groups are underrepresented, and it's clearly a constitution. It's also a constitution that was written under an authoritarian rule, as many constitutions in South America were. And Pedro Castillo put his finger on something very important when he said that he wanted a new draft of this constitution, a constitution that would be more inclusive. The idea is accepted by a lot of Peruvians. Now, the risk, according to others, is that it might destabilize the country.
Henry Rafael, your thoughts on this? The Constitution, is it out of date?
Well, I believe that at some point that this is a question that the people has to answer in a new election. There is going to be a referendum. I think if Castillo wins, he's going to call for a referendum to see if the Constitution has to be changed. From my perspective, what has to be changed is the way how the model is taken. I don't feel that the Constitution has to be changed. What I do believe is what we have to change is how politics make policies, and how politics respect the Constitution, and how governments, regional governments, municipalities distribute the money that the state gives them to improve the economy of the people. And that's why I think part of the country who has voted against Castillo is saying that they don't want a system that, let's say, the president of the party of Castillo is Vladimir Soran. He's been questionable for stealing money from the region that he was leading. The corruption is a problem that has to be solved by the people who's taking office, whoever this is going to be. So I don't believe the Constitution is the key problem to solve the problems of the country. The issue is to make that the policy makers has to be more convinced that what they have to do is to work for the people, to distribute the money, for equality throughout all of the country.